All right, today we're diving into the life of one of the 20th century's most polarizing figures, for sure, Fidel Castro. You know, the revolutionary who basically was Cuba for almost 50 years.
So, was he a hero who freed his people, or was he a tyrant who crushed anyone who disagreed with him? I mean, his legacy is a total battleground of opposing views. And to really get why, well, we've got to go all the way back to the beginning. First up, Fidel Castro's early years. Let's see exactly where the seeds of his revolutionary ideas were first planted.
You know, it's kind of ironic. Castro was actually born the son of a wealthy landowner, so his path was anything but predictable. When he got to the University of Havana, he got pulled right into the thick of student activism, and it was there that he really developed this passionate opposition to the U.S. meddling in the Caribbean and just got so frustrated with all the corruption in Cuban politics. So he wasn't just studying law, right? He was studying power. So how does a political activist become an armed rebel? That's a big jump, right? Well, for Castro, it all came down to one single event, an event that basically slammed the door on any kind of peaceful change and kicked open the door to all-out revolution. And this timeline here, it shows just how fast everything blew up. So when General Batista grabs power in a coup in '52 and just cancels the elections, that was the last straw for Castro. His attack on the Moncada barracks, yeah, it failed, and it landed him in prison, but it also, almost overnight, made him a national figure. As soon as he's released, he's off to Mexico, he teams up with Che Guevara, and they start planning their return. Now that voyage on the yacht, the Granma, it was a total disaster. Only a handful of them even survived. And yet, and this is the incredible part, from that desperate start up in the mountains, they launched a guerrilla war that somehow toppled the entire regime in just a little over 2 years. Just incredible. History will absolve me. This famous line, this was the climax of his speech during his trial for that Moncada attack. It wasn't just a great line, it became the title of his manifesto and a super powerful rallying cry for his movement. See, he wasn't just defending what he did. He was framing it as this necessary, heroic chapter in Cuba's long fight for real independence.
Okay, so Castro takes power, but he gets absolutely no time to rest. His small island nation is immediately thrown right onto the front lines of the Cold War, caught between these two massive global superpowers.
And he moved fast. I mean, really fast. He launched these sweeping land reforms, breaking up huge estates, and he nationalized major industries, a lot of them owned by U.S. companies. Now, for many poor Cubans, the new free healthcare and these massive literacy programs, they were absolutely life-changing. But for the middle and upper classes, and, for Washington, these moves were super alarming. And at the same time, the state was seizing control of the press and starting to crack down hard on any and all political opposition. Fearing another U.S. invasion, especially after the whole failed Bay of Pigs thing, Castro makes a really fateful decision. He agrees to let the Soviet Union place nuclear missiles in Cuba. And for 13 terrifying days, the entire world just held its breath, standing right on the brink of nuclear war. Now, the crisis was eventually solved, but it was between Kennedy and Khrushchev, directly. Castro was completely cut out of the final negotiations, and he felt deeply, deeply betrayed by his Soviet allies, a feeling that would really shape his foreign policy for decades to come. But here's the thing, Castro wasn't just content to rule Cuba. Nope. He wanted to project its influence way beyond its shores, and he set out to transform this little island into a major player among developing nations. 370,000. Just think about that number for a second. For a small nation like Cuba, that is absolutely staggering. Cuba's biggest foreign intervention was in Angola. Their soldiers helped turn the tide of the Civil War and played a huge role in the fight against apartheid in South Africa. It was such a big deal that Nelson Mandela himself would later personally thank Castro for it. So Castro's foreign policy was really firing on all cylinders. He was sending military support to leftist movements all over the world. He also worked to position himself as a leader of the non-aligned movement, all those nations who weren't officially with the US or the USSR. And he started this incredible program of medical internationalism, sending thousands of Cuban doctors to serve in poor countries. I mean, talk about a powerful form of soft power diplomacy. It's something that actually continues to this day. Okay. So for decades, the Cuban Revolution had this really powerful sponsor, the Soviet Union. But then, when the USSR just collapsed in 1991, Cuba was suddenly, terrifyingly, all alone. And this plunged the island into its worst economic crisis ever. And this table, wow, it just shows the complete devastation. The Soviet Union wasn't just some political ally, it was Cuba's economic lifeline. And then, literally overnight, all that support just vanished. The economy shrank by over 40%. Food, fuel, all gone. This led to constant blackouts, serious malnutrition, and just immense hardship in what Castro grimly called the special period. So, to keep the entire revolution from collapsing, Castro was forced to make these ideological compromises he had fought against for so long. He legalized the US dollar, he opened the country up to international tourism, and he even allowed for some small-scale private businesses. It was a really pragmatic move, maybe a reluctant one, but he was basically using capitalist tools to try and save his socialist state. Okay, so after surviving the Cold War, countless assassination attempts, a crushing US embargo, and the collapse of his main ally, how did Castro's incredibly long rule finally come to an end? And what kind of legacy did he leave behind? Just when Cuba seemed its most isolated, something interesting happened. A pink tide of leftist leaders started rising to power all across Latin America. And the most important new ally, by far, was Hugo Chavez of Venezuela. This alliance was a total lifeline. Venezuela sent cheap oil to Cuba, and in return, Cuba sent thousands of doctors to Venezuela. This gave Castro a new economic partner and a whole new level of influence in the region. After being at the helm for nearly 50 years, Castro's health finally started to fail. In 2006, an emergency surgery forced him to hand over power to his brother Raul. He then formally retired over the next few years, stepping down as president and then as the head of the party. He lived out his last years as this kind of elder statesman, writing and meeting with foreign leaders, before he died in 2016 at the age of 90. And this brings us right back to that fundamental divide we talked about at the start. On one side of the scale, you have the revolution's big achievements. World-class literacy and healthcare systems, and this fierce sense of national independence. But on the other side of the scale is the price that was paid. A one-party state, the jailing of political opponents, the total suppression of free speech, and an economy that, for many, just led to poverty. So, revolutionary hero or repressive tyrant? I think ultimately Castro's impact was so profound and his methods were so controversial that question might never have a simple answer. He was a figure who inspired millions and was hated by millions more. The whole debate over his legacy, it's really a debate about the nature of revolution itself. And that's a debate that will probably never, ever be settled. Hey, if you enjoyed this deep dive, you should definitely check out our World Changers and Global Icons playlist for more. And to make sure you don't miss our next explainer, be sure to subscribe to Notebook Summaries. Thanks so much for watching.